The rain that's been threatening all day grazes the windows and roof of my house on the harbour, then leaves as abruptly as it arrived, pushed in fast, then moved on by the wind. Perhaps tonight, while I sleep, the wind will switch to the north and the winter rain will arrive at last. When I moved in here, Kate came to inspect, both me and the house. 5 or more years ago now. In the end, she approved of the place I'd chosen. Out here, we both reason, then and now, nobody will find me, or my static heart. Within weeks of Bride's disappearance, Kate, Regan, and I left the island and Sweetwater itself. Kate and I said our first real goodbyes, abandoning the island as planned. Kate off to a provincial university to study to be a vet, and Regan, of course, tagged along to keep Kate and her allowance company. I stuck with what was left of the program too. Regan said it was crucial we just carried on as normal, so the cops wouldn't get suspicious. To his credit, in those early days it was Regan who held us together, kept Kate and I from cannibalizing each other, or ourselves. Bride's and my original plan had consisted of university in a big city. We both wanted that, to be unknown. Because on the island, everyone knew not only your business, but your ancestors' business too. Even Kate understood. She didn't need it, the distance, herself, but she got why we did. I suspected it didn't make that little flicker of hurt she harboured about Bride and me forging our own path, separate from her, any easier to live with. Though having Regan around, initially anyway, helped. Gave Kate her first sense of belonging, being anchored by a rope she had chosen all by herself. Bride and I were going flatting together, rather than to the halls of residence, like all the pamphlets advised first-year out-of-towners to do. Something small and quaint near the university was what we envisaged. If Bride had lived, come with me as planned, maybe I would have gone the distance. Life wasn't like that, though. And neither was university. I was bored. I hated living in a hostel. I'd got a lucky last-minute placing. I tried, I really did, to get on with the whole living thing. I attempted to live a Reader's Digest version of what Bride and I had decided our grown-up life was going to be like. But then I decided it was time to stop trying to live Bride's life instead of my own. So I did. My father was more than understanding about my need to hop on a jet plane to nowhere in particular. I was endlessly compelled to move, to put my fate in the hands of my feet. Kate, arch-organiser, would have been appalled if she had known about my laissez-faire attitude to the rest of my life. But of course she didn't. I hadn't told her I was leaving. I would do that later, after I'd gone. A postcard. "Hi, Kate. I'm in London." The trip north to tell my father I was dropping out of university, a mere month before end-of-year exams, was timely. He wanted out too. No longer wanted to live on the island. He wanted to be closer to town. My father didn't want to be a farmer anymore. It was close to 6 years before Kate and Regan went back to the island. They waited until the sea had eaten away all evidence of wrongdoing, and time had sifted through people's memories like grains of sand, polishing away the imperfections, all the rough edges. Other people's kids drowned, buildings burnt down, and boats continued to sink out at sea. So they forgot all about the death of a girl called Bride, and the role Kate, Regan, and I had to play in all that. In retrospect, it probably wasn't that difficult for Kate and Regan to re-establish themselves in the local community. Kate buying into the local veterinary practice and purchasing a place on the island all helped considerably, as did Kate getting involved in Pony Club and the hunt. They were farmers and professionals, white, middle class. Our kind of people, as they say. Kate had Abby within a year of their marriage, and with their daughter as the glue between them, she and Regan settled back into life on the island as if nothing had happened. As if that last summer we all spent together, and Bride herself, had never existed. I must confess, I've always thought Regan would stay with Kate forever, in his own haphazard sort of way. His talk of fixing the Pleiades has unnerved me too, much more than I'll ever let on to Kate. Why would he leave? And where would he go? Kate makes his life so comfortable, and there's Abby. I think Kate always thought he would stay forever too. He can't leave. And yet he can, and it seems will. Regan, the man who doesn't believe in fairy tales or fate or happy endings.
Right, everyone, it's 11 a.m. Embargo is lifted.
Manoa mai te mauri nuku, manoa mai te mauri rangi, ko te mauri kei au he mauri te poa ka, pakaru mai te po, tū mai te mauri, humi e, hui e, tai ki e. Tuatahi he mihi ki te atua nāna nei na mea katoa. Ranginui kei runga papatua nuku kei raro tino koroa. Te whare e tu ana e whakamahana mai, tēnā koe. Ki a koe Ngāti Whātua, te mana whenua tēnei rohi, tēnā koe. Kia koutou mā e hiki nei I te wero o te mahi mō Aotearoa, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia koe te Peremia Jacinda, kia koe te Peremia Tuarua, me nā minata katoa, nau mai, hari mai, whakatau mai I tēnei humble officers of Chapman Trip. This is much more excitement than we usually see in the average dusty corridors of legal practice at Chapman Trip. And so we welcome you very warmly to today's proceedings. I don't have obviously much to say other than welcome on behalf of the firm and also a couple of housekeeping. In the unlikely event of emergency, follow the lawyers. They will probably be faster than small rodents towards the stairs at the back beyond reception. You'll see the bathrooms are over that way as well. I acknowledge Ngāti Whātua in a couple of sense. One, because as Marama is the chair of the Trust Board who's here today, is aware, I married in. But also because we sit in the rohi today. And I was thinking back in terms of infrastructure, when Apihai Te Kawau invited Hobson shortly after the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi to come and establish Auckland here, they had a vision for the future. And I thought that was a nice tie in terms of what we're about to hear today, is a new vision for the future and what an exciting place Aotearoa both is and what an even greater place it can become in the future. I was also explaining to my two sons, Hauraki and Oliver, who have had the pleasure to sit at the same table with Jacinda from time to time. Hauraki actually, he was an electric chair for the Labour Party, and Hauraki came along to chair one meeting when our childcare fell through. But they are very excited about these types of proceedings because in any governmental approach, they are very excited by some thought of a gathering like today because there is both a Labour Party, a New Zealand First Party and a Green Party, and they're a bit concerned that too many parties in one day and I might overdo it. But it is actually for them that we also think about today and the issues of infrastructure and the need to meet the challenges of the world, whether that's in health and climate and making New Zealand both a competitive and wonderful place to live with the thoughts of balance and well-being that brings. Now that's all I think you need to hear from me as you would think about tikanga. As I started with a prayer, the tikanga of Chapman Trip is very fortunate that I do not need to finish with a waiata because I make the tikanga up, and you do not need to hear the dusty baritone of someone who last sang in a choir in 1986. So without further ado, I hand over to Grant, but welcome, tēnā koutou katoa.
O kia ora, ngā mihi nui, kia koutou katoa. Tēnā koe, Nick. Thank you very, very much for that introduction. It's an absolute pleasure for me to be here today, and I'm delighted to be here alongside the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister Shaw, and ministerial colleagues. What we're here to do today is to announce the New Zealand Upgrade Programme, the biggest boost to infrastructure spending in New Zealand in more than a generation. I'm going to make some introductory remarks and then I'll be followed by some brief speeches by the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister Shaw. This government's economic plan is focused on building a more productive, more sustainable and more inclusive economy. Quality infrastructure is key to achieving this vision. The decade before our government came into office saw significant underinvestment in critical national infrastructure. This has been a handbrake on our economy and our society and has led to lower productivity, ageing and neglected schools and hospitals, and congestion in our towns and cities. It is time to do much, much better. This is a government of infrastructure. We have already boosted spending significantly in budgets 2018 and budgets 2019, and today we add significantly more to that. We will spend over the next 5 years around $49 billion worth of capital spending. As you can see from the chart that I've put up there, we have had periods in New Zealand's history where we have not invested significantly in our core and critical infrastructure. That cannot go on, and as you can see from the chart, it will not go on. This is the right time to do this work. Not only are there important projects to be done, but the economy is in good shape. When we compare ourselves to the rest of the developed world, we are forecast to do better than virtually all of the countries that we trade with, and even in this year that we've had in 2019, or better than all but one of those countries. So the time is right for us. We've also managed to carefully manage the government's accounts over the last 2 years. Debt is under control, and we've run $13 billion worth of surpluses. When we came into office, we inherited net core Crown debt of 22.7%. We have reduced that to just under 20% over these 2 years. When we fully roll out this package that we are announcing today, net core Crown debt will peak at 21.5%. We have the room to do this because we have managed the books carefully. Borrowing costs are also near historic lows, around 1.5% for 10 years. It makes sense to take advantage of this and invest in infrastructure to boost our economy. The $12 billion New Zealand upgrade program will boost growth and create a significant number of jobs. Even in just the first year, NZTA estimate for their projects, we're talking about up to 1,000 jobs, and then between 7,000 and 9,000 jobs in the wider supply chain, and that's just in the first year alone. As I announced just before Christmas, the $12 billion package is divided into just on $8 billion worth of announcements that you will hear today, and $4 billion that has been added to the multi-year capital allowance. We make decisions about the use of the multi-year capital allowance at budget each year, and we'll have announcements about where parts of that $4 billion will be going at that time. Turning to the projects that we are announcing and the detail that we're announcing today. Firstly, in the area of transport, this is a program that will boost the productivity of the New Zealand economy and future-proof New Zealand. It contains a balance of projects that will ease congestion, speed up travel times, move freight to rail, and, as I'll come to later, modernise our schools and our hospitals. Our targeted set of investments in the rail area, the Deputy Prime Minister will outline in detail shortly, but we're talking about an additional over $1 billion worth of projects being announced today on top of the nearly $3 billion we've already invested in rail as a government over the time we've been in office, and that is a very significant investment, but I will leave to the Deputy Prime Minister the detail of those projects. In transport overall, we have $6.8 billion being announced today. This, of course, comes on top of around about a $13 billion program through the National Land Transport Fund's 2018 to 2021 program. And at this point, I want to acknowledge two ministers in particular for their work in this area. Firstly, the Minister of Infrastructure, Shane Jones, and the work that he's done to establish the Infrastructure Commission that is helping guide our work, and the Minister of Transport, Phil Twyford, who's played a critical role in bringing this package together. The roading investments that we're talking about today are significant. In Northland, we will be investing $691 million to upgrade the Whangarei to Port Marsden road to 4 lanes, which will improve freight connectivity and improve productivity in the north. In the Auckland area, we're talking about an investment of around $3.4 billion, including Penlink, opening up growth in the north and connecting Whangaparoa residents to the Northern Busway. We'll be upgrading Mill Road to 4 lanes and connecting Manukau to Drury to ease traffic on State Highway 1 and better connect parts of Auckland. We're widening State Highway 1 from Papakura to Drury and building a cycle lane alongside it to get commuters to work faster, and there's obviously the work on the Sky Path as well. These are significant investments for the Auckland area. The package in Waikato Bay of Plenty of around $991 million will be spent in three main areas: building the roundabout at the intersection of State Highway 1 and State Highway 29, which will improve the safety of one of New Zealand's most dangerous intersections. In Tauranga, a 4-lane northern link and upgrades on State Highway 2 to Omokoroa will improve safety on a dangerous stretch of highway. As we move down the country, and in Wellington, we are 4-laning State Highway 1 from Otaki to north of Levin and bringing forward the second stage of State Highway 58's safety improvements. The Malling interchange will be developed, which will reduce risk of flooding, help ease congestion during peak times, and the railway realignment will improve reliability and give more park and ride options. Our Christchurch package will speed up public transport in the high-growth southwest of the city, improve safety in rural towns in the region, and boost economic development with a more reliable route for freight to Littleton Port. Our Queenstown package will greatly improve transport into the town centre on State Highway 6A, ease congestion on State Highway 6, and support continued tourism growth. These are important projects, and the big difference today is that they are funded. Every dollar required for these projects is in the government accounts today. That is a major step forward. These projects are better, will be delivered faster, and are funded compared to what we have seen in the past. I'm just going to briefly also talk about some other aspects of the package that we are announcing today. Over the last 2 years, we have put $2.45 billion into health capital expenditure to fix our hospitals and to look towards building a new hospital in Dunedin. That is significantly larger than the previous government managed, in fact 2 times what the previous government managed across their whole 9 years of health capital expenditure. But today we are taking the opportunity to add to that $2.45 billion, $300 million worth of funding for projects that have already been identified by district health boards and are ones that we can get on with as quickly as we possibly can. We are investing a significant amount of money, around $86 million, I believe, in expanded neonatal intensive care and in maternity care right across the country, including a $25 million investment in Starship Hospital here in Auckland. $96 million will fund new and improved mental health facilities in Tauranga, Whakatane, Hutt Valley and Taranaki, and this is on top of investments we've already announced for new mental health facilities in the Waikato, Palmerston North and Tairāwhiti, and indeed there is more to come on the west coast of the South Island as well. Regional and rural service projects will see $26 million of investment, including in Whanganui and in Kaitaia Hospital with the rebuild there. In addition, we're investing $75 million in pushing ahead with upgrading and fixing ageing hospital facilities around the country to deal with the level of underinvestment that we inherited. These are significant projects, again, that add to that $2.45 billion figure. We're also making announcements today, and indeed Mr Shaw has already made announcements today about the Clean Powered Public Service area, and I'll leave him to go through the detail of those very important projects that are about modernising our economy in an area where we must deal with and address climate change. And in the coming weeks, Minister Shane Jones will be announcing the first projects that are supported through the additional $300 million for regional development opportunities that relate also to this package. And finally, last year, Minister Hipkins announced the $400 million building upgrade in more than 2,000 schools, and I can say from personal experience that the tradies are already on the ground in those schools. I went and visited one of my schools last week to couldn't find the principal initially because she was on the grounds with a local tradesperson working out how their share of that $400 million would be spent. That is practical projects in our schools to give our children the classrooms and the facilities that they deserve. So in conclusion, what I can say is that this is a significant boost that is needed at this time in the New Zealand economy. It is possible to do because we have managed the books carefully. The cost of borrowing is low. The projects are there to be done. We have had a significant investment over the last 2 years. This simply adds to it and stands in stark contrast to what we saw in the previous 9 years, where there was a lot of talk but not a lot of walk. With that, I will introduce the Prime Minister.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui, kia koutou. And can I start by acknowledging all of my colleagues who are here today, the Deputy Prime Minister, co-leader of the Green Party, James Shaw, and Minister for Climate Issues. And of course, a number of the guests who we have here today, representative of those groups who take a keen interest in what's being announced, not least Mayor of Auckland, Phil Goff. Today, the government is announcing, as you've seen, the details of the major projects that make up the New Zealand Upgrade Program, the most significant investment in public infrastructure in a generation, designed to future-proof and grow our economy. The program looks at our infrastructure needs differently. It's a modern plan for our future. It asks not just what our infrastructure needs are today, but how we can future-proof them for tomorrow. How we can deliver traditional projects like roads and buildings in a way that reduces our emissions, that gives transport options to commuters, and that tackle climate change. It also is a program that addresses the realities we face. New Zealand has had underinvestment in the core public facilities we all use, and that has happened for too long. Our schools and hospitals have been run down, or they don't have the full range of facilities they should, be it a new school library or a neonatal unit. There is unmet need across the country, and this program aims to fix that. The program also recognises that modern transport investment needs to be about more than just roads. Investing in rail to get trucks off our roads and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions is both a win for drivers and for our environment. This program invests a further $897 million in rail, in addition to the $1 billion invested in KiwiRail in last year's budget. And when we're building new roads in Auckland, for instance, to help unlock the chronic gridlock the city faces and speed up travel times, we are building them smart. For example, where we are developing 4-lane roads, we will look to include lanes for public transport, vehicles with multiple passengers and freight, and separated walking and cycling facilities will be an integral part of all of the developments. This program represents a leap forward in how we plan and build roads in New Zealand. In Auckland, we've committed almost $3.48 billion to accelerate 7 projects that will significantly support growth to both the north and the south of the city, providing access to much-needed land for future growth. This is also a program that is good for our economy. We have record low interest rates, low public debt levels. We are coming off the back of delivering $13 billion in surpluses in our first 2 years managing the books. Our stable economic management has made this a perfect time to invest. Add to that an urgent need to fix our transport system and an opportunity to create more jobs for those out of work, and it couldn't be clearer that the time is right. While we have a growth rate that is the envy of Australia, the UK, the EU and Canada, we are not a government that rests on its laurels. We want to spur growth higher by providing additional stimulus in the economy, and this program is part of that plan. Treasury estimates the program will add $10 billion to the nominal value to the economy over the next 5 years, while providing additional boosts to productivity over time. NZTA estimates that between 7,000 and 9,000 jobs in the wider supply chain will be created from just the first 5 transport projects to get underway, not to factor in the additional opportunities created by the hospital and school build programs too, and keeping in mind those are dispersed very deliberately across the country. And the program will support our regions. While there are a number of transport projects in Auckland, critical road and rail projects are also being funded in Northland, Waikato, Tauranga, Palmerston North, Kapiti, Wellington, Lower Hutt, Wairarapa, Christchurch and Queenstown. And the hospital, school and decarbonisation projects mean virtually every corner of New Zealand in some way will be touched by this upgrade program. The program is also good news for the construction sector and the wider business community. Minister Jones has led important work on the development of the infrastructure pipeline, and this program provides certainty of projects for at least the next decade. Given the significance of the infrastructure upgrade to the New Zealand economy, and the fact that this cuts across a wide number of portfolios, I've placed Finance Minister Grant Robertson in charge of it. Ministers will report to the Finance Minister on the delivery of their projects, and the Finance Minister will also access other infrastructure projects that are to be added to the program over time. Minister Robertson will provide regular updates on the program's progress and the benefits that they're delivering for New Zealand. One of those benefits, as I've said, will be jobs. There has never been a better time to enrol in a trade. I'll say that again. There has never been a better time to enrol in a trade. There are good jobs that pay good money attached to these projects, and I especially encourage young New Zealanders to consider taking up a building or other trade apprenticeship. And I do want to add that that is a project and a focus that has been for this government, a project over the last 2 years to increase the pipeline of young people taking up a trade or apprenticeship, be it through our Booster Gateway, Trades Academies, the Vocational Excellence Awards we created through all secondary schools last year, and of course the Fees Free program. It's all been about increasing the number of young people in particular who take up these opportunities, and we are growing them. When I came into government, I said we would be ambitious. I don't shy away from having aspiration and significant plans for New Zealand, doing things better and differently to how they were done before. The New Zealand Upgrade Program is representative of that ambition that we have as a government and the ambition we were elected to implement. And it is one that plans for the future. The program seeks to resolve long-term challenges, especially getting around our major cities, but in a way that future-proofs us and that responds to climate change. It represents the best of the three parties here and our common goals of growing our economy, getting people into work, reducing our greenhouse emissions, supporting our regions, investing in rail, and ensuring every community has a great school and the best health facility. That is what this upgrade program is all about, and it is what this government represents. It's now my privilege and pleasure to hand over to the Leader of the New Zealand First Party and the Deputy Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa, to quote Radio New Zealand, ko Winston Peters tēnei. Good morning, and Prime Minister, Minister of Finance, Mr Shaw, my ministerial and other colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the chance to talk to you this morning. What you're going to hear won't all be pretty, but it'll be factual. This investment package into New Zealand's infrastructure could not come at a more appropriate time. This is the largest investment in New Zealand's infrastructure in many, many decades. We need infrastructure to take us into a better future, supporting and building our economy and our communities, and it's nationwide. Rail is a seriously important part of that. This government recognises that, and last December released our vision for a 21st century rail network that gives our cities moving, connects our regions and gets into more freight, and then more freight coming off the roads, which is what everyone is doing internationally and around the world, excepting we were going in the opposite direction in this country. We know that rail is a critical part of an integrated transport network. It's essential for economic growth. It helps ease congestion in our cities and reduces the number of trucks on our increasingly busy highways and regional roads. And given our topography and the cost of roading, it all makes plain common sense. You see, the last 3 decades, though, has seen appalling neglect of our rail system in New Zealand. And prior to this government coming to power in 2017, a malignant, derelict, brainless policy of deliberately running railways down was followed to sabotage a key infrastructural asset in this country. And too many just stood aside and let it happen. Didn't get up, didn't respond, didn't provide any leadership in saying this cannot be good for our long-term future. We remember who the Minister of Transport was back then because He's the National Party's current leader, quoted in today's papers as saying, "What I'll say I'll do, I'll do." The sad thing about that statement is that, as you know, and you journalists all know, it's bovine scatology when it comes to the issue of transport and infrastructure. Mr. Bridges, let me put this question to you. How many dollars did you set aside for the 4-lane highway from Whangarei to Marsden Point? Or, for that matter, from Whangarei to connect with Warkworth? How many dollars was set aside? How many dollars was set aside for the 4-lane highway going north of Tauranga past Omokoroa? Again, in advertisements on the side of the road that we've all seen and barely one journalist has commented on. That's why I moved to have to respond this morning. The answer is, as every journalist here knows, not 1 cent. And I can ask also, with respect to the project that the National Party started between Puhoi to Warkworth, a 4-lane highway, how many years has that taken? Well, 12 years. On that basis, all the way to Whangarei will be 68 more years. I don't know how you feel about that. I don't see many around here being able to see the end of that project unless we do what we're doing now under this government and dramatically changing the settings and the investment. In short, what I'm saying is go talk flim-flam somewhere else, but this coalition government has realised what needs to be done, and since coming to office we've already allocated more than $2.8 billion for rail. Through Budget 2019 we began investing in a national freight rail network with over $1 billion in funding, $741 million of which is the first phase of restoring a reliable, resilient and safe freight and tourism network. Today we're pleased to announce that this government is investing a further $1.14 billion to expand on these investments through 4 much-needed rail projects. First, $350 million for improvements to the Wiri to Key Park corridor in Auckland, including construction of a 3rd rail line to ease the bottleneck between Wiri and Westfield, providing additional capacity around Westfield Junction and works around Key Park to improve rail access to the ports of Auckland. $371 million, that's 2. $371 million to extend electrification from Papakura to Pukekohe of the Auckland Metro network and 19 kilometres of extension with respect to that project. $211 million for improvements to the Wellington, Wairarapa and Palmerston North network and beyond, including upgraded tracks for the Wairarapa and Capital Connection lines, safety connections and refurbishment of Capital Connection carriages, and last, $247 million to develop the Drury Railway Station with 2 new stations at Drury East and Drury West to increase transport access and amenity for this fast-growing centre. These projects are designed to support the needs of a commuting population, increasing passenger capacity, ensuring reliability, and providing smoother and faster transitions to support our workforce. New Zealand hasn't seen investment commitments like this in over 40 years. Tomorrow at Whangarei, leaving the station, will be a train. I hope some of you are on it. If you really know what's going to happen in the future, coming south to look at all the upgrades and investments we're putting in already in that part of the country. This government is planning the transport network in integrated terms, road and rail, and dare I say at sea, and that will see us well into the future. Rail is a national strategic asset. It was realised a long time ago by a man called Vogel when he built more in the space of 10 years than we did in terms of rails for the next 130 years. And so we are going to restore, as a government, our belief in this key utility that every other country in the world understands, excepting one until recently, which was New Zealand. Rail is a national strategic asset, and we have a vision for rail in our country, and we are investing in making that vision a reality. Thank you very much. Now, it's my privilege to introduce the next speaker, the Honourable James Shaw.
Wa tēnā koutou katoa, ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Good morning. Most New Zealanders want to be able to look back upon today and to see a government that acted on the climate crisis with the urgency that that crisis requires. One of the ways that we're doing this is by ensuring that clean energy becomes a normal part of our everyday lives. Since our government came to power, we have been clear that the climate crisis is not just something facing future generations. It needs to be tackled now, and every single day counts. Since, the Zero Carbon Act, the Climate Change Commission, the emissions trading scheme reforms, the first set of emissions budgets, the Green Investment Fund, the Billion Trees program, the end of new offshore fossil fuel exploration, electrifying the public service car fleet, companies reporting to shareholders on their climate-related risks, the billions that we have previously announced, as well as the $1.6 billion announced today in rail, light rail, buses, walking and cycling infrastructure. I can say, I think, with some confidence, that in the past 2 years, our government has done more to act on climate change than the sum total of governments for the last 30 years. You've already heard that through the investment package the government's announcing today, we're supporting cleaner ways for people to get around. This hasn't been widely advertised, but today's upgrade actually builds more kilometres of cycleways than it does even for roads. The billions of dollars that the government is investing in rail and in and between our cities will pave the way for a congestion-free, multimodal transport network across the entire country. We've also decided the first group of projects to be supported by our $200 million Clean Powered Public Service Fund. 8 schools and 2 hospitals will be upgraded to run on clean energy instead of the coal boilers that in some cases are 70 years old. Now that just represents $10 million of the $200 million in total under the Clean Powered Public Service Fund. That means that our loved ones will have access to the care and support that they need, but in hospitals that are powered by clean, climate-friendly, renewable energy. On top of that, current and future generations of kids at a range of schools will now be kept warm during some of the most formative years of their lives by clean energy rather than by coal. For kids today growing up worried about how climate change will impact their lives now and in the future, every year that they have been alive has been one of the hottest on record. They want to see us act. The projects that we're announcing today are an important part of delivering on the promise that we've made to future generations to pass on a world that is better for what we did. Today is the start of a shift towards a clean-powered public service, and work is underway right now to decide what we do next. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Everyone, that brings us to the conclusion of the formal element of our program today. You can see from the package that we've set out for you, this is a substantial and an exciting program of work. It is ultimately better, faster and funded. We have in front of me a group of ministers who are available to speak to any of our stakeholders here, including our media, on any elements of the program you're interested in. Obviously, Minister Woods covers ECA, Minister Hipkins, education, Minister Twyford, obviously transport, Minister Robertson, money and sports, if anyone wishes to have some more lighter topic of conversation. Minister Peters, obviously rail, Minister Jones, regional development, and Minister Shaw, the climate focus of our package. We will now be breaking. There'll be refreshments available for everyone. Ministers will then make ourselves available to the media to answer any questions that they may have. But it's beholden on me to again thank Chapman Tripp for hosting us here today. Thank you for all being a part of what is a very, very exciting part of this government's agenda, the New Zealand Upgrade Program. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
I see that as a very fortuitous thing.
So what's the story that you tell of the Stevens Island keepers in the children's children's book?
Well, as I say, we did this trip, and basically I've just redone the trip in the children's book, except I've invented a child called Oliver, who comes along, and he gets to fly on a helicopter for the first time, and he gets to encounter the tuatara, which is, there's 30,000 tuataras on Stevens Island currently. I don't know who counted them, but that's what Doc is saying. And they're just...
Quadrants, remember them at school?
Exactly, yeah. And they're just everywhere, and there are sort of burrows, and at night they come out